Welcome! In this video, we're taking a quick look at Teresa, another rare Elune that is a tank class in this case. And the reason that I'm going over her is because of the daily boss battles and because she is a female tank, which is going to help in the cases where you need to bring two tanks into a battle and you want to bring females in for your better team, as you can still use your Chloe in those cases. This way you can maintain the same gender aspect as well as bringing the two tank aspect in the cases where that is an option for the daily battles. So let's look at her and why that she is a good female tank to bring. She is at 6 stars, does have decent stats for survivability against the boss at 41k HP and 4.5, 4.8k MDef and PDef. This makes her does have decent abilities. Now you can transcend her up if you want to the max, and she does go up to a very decent 62k HP with a very good 6.6 to 7k MDef. This does make her quite tanky for a tank, especially because she's a rare Elune. Let's go take a look at her skills and why she is good again in boss fights compared to maybe some of the other rare female tanks. This skill is a basic physical damage skill attacking the frontline only enemy. Nothing special about it, nothing great, it is just a basic damage dealing skill, whoop-de-doo. But it's her other skills that make her better. In this case, she has a special skill. This skill does do damage, but also does a despair effect, a curse effect on the target for despair for 1 turn. This can be useful for using for battles, but also it is a damage dealing skill that does magical damage, so she can do physical and magic damage to bosses. When you level this up to the max, it does go up to a 2-turn despair. The skill gem effect for this one is blue, blue, orange, which provides a chance to provoke the target for 2 turns. So since you're going to be using her as a tank, you can do this just to have that chance of her being able to provoke a target. However, the extra damage that you go with it with a full blue or the extra crit rate with full orange isn't as important, so going with the provoke chance isn't a bad option. Looking at her ultimate skill, this is something that does make her useful for a team, especially in boss battles. This skill, what it does is it gives a barrier buff to all of your allies based on her attack. This absorbs any damage that they take except soul damage from bosses, meaning that it gives you a little bit of a support as it provides a barrier. As this is leveled up to the max at 6, it does go up to a very decent amount of absorption and goes for 3 turns. As she does have low base attack, it doesn't end up being all that powerful, but it is a way to absorb some of that boss damage, and it does help provide your team with a little bit better survivability in the case that it can absorb those attacks. The skill gem effect for this one is green, green, violent, has a 5% chance to heal the HP of all allies by 10% of our attack. As this isn't a great option, there really isn't much reason not to go with it. As the barrier is also affected by the green heal gems, going with a full green set can give you the benefit of getting a stronger barrier, but going with the violent on her too could give you the one violent on here to give her the speed, but the chance to heal your allies. So it's up to you which one you want to go with. Now let's take a look at her passives. This passive on her removes a random effect immediately upon as soon as she gets a turn, it removes a random effect. Now she doesn't remove the effects of Lumen's Grace and Soul effects. This means that she won't remove those types of buffs to herself, but if she removes a weakening effect or a status effect, she heals herself by 10%. This means that if a boss does apply a debuff to her, that she has a chance to remove the debuff and heal herself by 10%, making her a little bit better and stronger as a tank, as she can constantly heal herself and cleanse herself as she goes along in the battle. Looking in at her second passive, this one reduces damage by 5% for every ally with a higher HP ratio than she has. So as long as she's in the front taking some damage and everybody else on your team has a good amount of HP, then she reduces the damage she takes by 5%. This makes her tankier. So if you're running her in the front line as a double tank team for those boss battles, then she can have 2 frontline tanks, and even if she's not the lowest between those two, as long as the 3 back row Elunes that you have max HP, she still reduces the damage by 15%, up to 20% on a 5-man team, but she can still reduce it by 15%, meaning that the damage she takes is even lower, making her a pretty good tank in those cases, as she does have better survivability. This does make her overall a decent kit for a rare Elune for tanking, and it is a good option for her as her skill kit overall is better for your team as well as for herself for tanking and survivability. This makes her very good for picking as a female tank in addition to other female tanks that you might have. For example, if you have Rachel, then she would be the second female tank that you would want to bring on those 2 tank teams where you have to maintain the same gender. She is an option to use there. Looking in for the gear for her, anything that gives her better tank stats. She can provide buffs, and so you can use the skill set that gives her the gear set that gives her the 20% damage, reduced damage if she has a buff active, but you can also give her other sets that increase her physical and magic defense if she is crit, as well as giving her the corrupt set that gives her the chance of providing additional souls to your team. You can give her a full moon set, just a 3-piece set, to give her that chance to land those debuffs, mainly the despair debuff or provokes, but it is not necessarily needed, and I would focus more on just base stats and ability to tank if you're going to be using her in those boss fights as a tank. In most cases, all she'll be doing is just filling a role to meet that requirement for the daily boss battles. So she doesn't need excellent stats to be able to be useful in that role, she just needs to be able to survive. So anything that can give her somewhat decent stats to survive is all you're going to need. Teresa is a good female tank in her own, especially at early game. You can use her for a variety of things, and her shield or barrier does come into play in helping your team survive, as well as her ability to heal herself and cleanse herself too, making it a little bit easier to run her with other Elunes and healers where you don't have to worry too much about cleansing debuffs off of her, as she can do it herself every time she gets a turn, and then she can also, anytime she removes a status effect, she heals herself. This makes her very good for support as a tank, as your support or your healer doesn't have to be as strong at early game. She is useful for that role. And that's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll answer them as soon as I can. Thank you.